Okay. Welcome back to the Stacey West preview show. I am your host, Jake. We are here for another preview, the second of the week. This week, another big game coming up at Sincil Bank. Ipswich Town will come back to Lincoln for an interesting League One clash. We are lucky to be joined by Mr. Benjamin Bloom, big YouTuber. Ben, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, man. I owe you an apology because we were supposed to do this yesterday, weren't we? And I very foolishly double booked myself. So I'm sorry, I messed up.
No, you're absolutely fine, mate. It's all that matters is the Stacey West listeners get to listen to an Ipswich fan chat for a couple of minutes. Let's talk about football then. Obviously, Ipswich had quite a busy summer transfer window. I think it's been quite well publicised. Change of manager, Paul Cook came in just before the end of last season and sort of changed the whole squad. Talk to us a little bit about the transfer window. Which was the deal you were sort of most intrigued by?
I mean, it was just balmy, absolute sort of insanity. I think in the end, I don't even know the number. It was like 26 out and 19 in or something like that.
Yeah.
And you say to me, talk to me about the deal that stood out the most. I can't, because it was so like the last few transfer windows, we'd sign a couple of free transfers and Alan Judge, and we get excited about Alan Judge or James Norwood on one of them. And this one, sort of the players started coming, and you get the keeper from Salford, and you think, all right, that's a decent signing. And then on the same day, we signed Connor Chaplin, who was the player of the month in the Championship for Barnsley, and George Edmondson, who'd been at Rangers. And you start to think, crikey, Scott Fraser from Milton Keynes, who played really well against us last season. So, and I'm sure we're going to get to the lack of performance from these very good players on paper, but it was genuinely and I'm not sure many sets of fans will have experienced that, of a complete, turnaround of virtually your entire squad. So very odd. If I had to pick one, probably Chaplin, on the basis of what I saw him in the Championship, would be the one. But yeah, very, very busy.
And as someone that covers the Championship quite regularly, obviously your channel is very Championship orientated. Were you quite surprised to see a lot of those players sort of not going into the Championship and staying there and dropping into League One? Like Connor Chaplin, you said, obviously a very good player for Barnsley. Were you surprised to see him drop down?
Yeah, mightily surprised. And I mean, look, there's a few factors. One is COVID and the Championship and its finances, where there's an argument that the Championship's always on a knife edge, isn't it? Because there's always the parachute teams have got 5 times more TV money than everybody else, and there'll be teams that are gambling to try and go against those guys financially, and the tide rises, and all of a sudden you go, I don't know, however many months it was without commercial revenue or gate receipts, and all of a sudden squads can't be, and with especially the ones without the parachute payments, they can't be 25 members dense, and probably other Championship clubs weren't willing to pay, and then a few teams in League One were, and we know that Wigan and Ipswich and Sunderland and Pompey have been willing to put the wages down. So it got less surprising as we went, but also just plainly the crazy way the FFP rulings work, if you've got the backing of a potentially wealthy owner, you are better off spending money in League One than you are in the Championship. And I think certainly with examples of Ipswich and Wigan, I assume there'll be get-outs for these players in the contracts. It's almost better to splash the cash in League One than it is in the Championship.
Do you feel like this could be Ipswich's best transfer window since being down in League One? Obviously, the sort of when they first came down, they signed a lot of League One ready players like your John Nolans and your Toto Ntialas, but they seem to be recruiting for the Championship next season potentially, don't they?
Yeah, which given the state of the league table is, it might all come around, and we might be sat here in a year's time going, oh, remember that bad start? That's a distant memory. But yeah, I mean, I can't come on your show after you guys got to the playoff final last season with really careful recruitment and say, we're planning for the Championship next season. That would be massively arrogant, because you've got to, League One is hard, man. League One is, we said it many times, the place where formerly big Premier League clubs come to die, isn't it? Yeah. So I wouldn't be so bold as to say that, but and I'll mention again, get outs from contracts and whatnot. You'd imagine there'll be a fair turnaround if they don't ultimately go up, and obviously they're nowhere near at the moment.
You mentioned sort of the gulf and sort of quality in the Championship this year with the money coming down from the Premier League. Do you think League One's quite the opposite this year, with a lot of very good teams? Obviously, a lot of money is in League One this year, with your likes of yourselves, Wigan, your teams that you mentioned there. Do you think it's the strongest League One that we've had for quite a while? Certainly since Ipswich have been down here.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the strongest League One, but I don't know whether the money is the big factor. I mean, we spoke so many times last season about, and again, clubs are where they're supposed to be, and other clubs get cross with the term big club or big fan base or whatever. But the likes of Ipswich, Charlton, Sheffield Wednesday probably, and Sunderland, bigger fan bases than all of them, Pompey, Oxford, Wigan as well, FA Cup winners. A lot of clubs accumulated in League One. And then clubs like yours that are very well coached and very well run, and MK Dons with their system, and Accrington are always horrible to play against, and now Bolton with their total footballers as well. So it's not just the money. There's some well-run clubs along. It's funny that the rich ones don't tend to be the well-run ones, do they?
And the start to the season, and you've touched on it previously. We'll have to address it. Obviously, it's not been a great start given the sort of money that's been thrown into the footballing side of the football club. Anyways, how have you sort of made of the start? Surely you would have expected better from the fixtures that you've had as well.
Oh, you've been diplomatic there, saying it's been not a great start. It's been pathetic. I mean, especially when you parlay in the quality of player on paper. Yes, we know football's played on grass, not on paper. That's come in. It's been atrociously bad. And, you talk about big club, little club, whatever. Well, Morecambe showed up at Portman Road and drew 2-2, and Cheltenham beat Ipswich 2-1. So, so much for being a big historical club or whatever. If you're not going to turn up against Cheltenham and Morecambe, they'll take the points off you. But no, it's been, if the transfer window was beyond your wild expectations for the level of player that came in, then the performance has been beyond your expectations bad, for that level of player. And I mean, comfortably the worst defence in the league by a mile. 15 conceded in 6 games. We're not talking about 2 per game, like 2.5 goals per game, comfortably the worst in the league. And, Lincoln's not an easy game. And then I think we've got Wycombe and Sheffield Wednesday after that as well. So there could be problems if these next 3 games don't go well.
So is it the defence that seems to be the issue? Because obviously in terms of going forward, you look at the attacking qualities that you've got. You've got Bon, a former Lincoln City man himself. You've got, I know he doesn't play, but Norwood, players of that ilk, and it seems to go on forever. Is it the defence that's the problem during these games, or is it just purely you've been unlucky, or is it is it the defence that's just not pulling their weight?
It's difficult. It's not one where I think you can point to one thing. I think it's one of those situations where if several factors kind of rise together, everything will be okay. And Paul Cook, we know from his time, especially at Wigan, wants to play 4-2-3-1 with fullbacks way up the pitch, 2 screening midfielders and a physical number 10, wingers, narrow, that type of situation. So if we're outlining, I think you can talk about the goals against column without it necessarily being the defence. It's obviously systematic through the team. And then you've got this weird kind of mental, psychological fragility where it's now a thing, taking the lead and conceding 2 goals every game. And it's obviously in their heads. And it's not been good, and we've been very, very easy to play through and very, very fragile. And it's one of those where fans go, "Oh, we're going to beat somebody 4-0, and then everything will turn." But sometimes it doesn't turn, does it?
No, and the goalkeeping situation doesn't seem to look to help either. Obviously, you brought in Walton on loan as well. The lad from Salford seems to have a bit of a bad start, and he was left out of the squad. I think it was last week against Bolton. What's happening there then? Obviously, there's two very good League One goalkeepers at the very least. That surely isn't going to help the back four setup, is it?
No, absolutely not. So Cladkey from Salford wasn't good in his first games, but again, I go back to my previous answer. This is not a situation where you're outlining a single player or a single, perhaps wasn't given protection, and then the psychology of the team's not necessarily right. And it's very difficult, isn't it? It's football, it's ruthless, and all of a sudden, Christian Walton, who Paul Cook had at Wigan before, they could get him, and they chose to got him. And on the one hand, yes, it's very ruthless, and it's a bit tough on poor Cladkey. But on the other hand, if it improves the situation and it's the right call, then so be it. But he had a pretty inauspicious debut in the 5-2 home defeat against Bolton.
Let's talk about the playoffs last year. Obviously, you watched Lincoln quite a bit in those three watch-alongs that you did on your channel. Were you impressed with Lincoln and overall last year? Were you quite impressed with the way that we managed to go about ourselves?
Yeah, I thought you were a really, really good side, really well coached, clear plan, because we bigged up League One and said, oh, it's difficult. But there's some dross in League One. And when you get a side like Coventry the previous season who knock the ball about and have an identity, and I thought Lincoln were quite sort of similar to that. Obviously, without doing a clanging name drop, I'm known to David Johnson, and so I always kept an eye on Brennan Johnson, and George Grant was superb, and they're both in the Championship now. And I don't know, I just like the cut of Appleton's jib as a coach. It's just Blackpool. They were just away like a train, weren't they, for the second half of the season? And you could probably tell 5-10 minutes into the final that it was their moment, wasn't it? But again, Lincoln, well-run club, and you got some criticism from when the Cowleys were there, didn't you? Oh, it's long ball, and they've got money for a lower league team. No one's saying that anymore. I think everyone was very respectful of Appleton and Lincoln last season.
You mentioned some of our old lads. Obviously, you cover the Championship in quite a lot of detail. Can you just let us know how the likes of Brennan and George and Morgan are all getting on at their respective new clubs?
Well, a couple of them are not in very good situations, I have to say, because obviously Forest are bottom. But look, Johnson is in the team. He's made his breakthrough now to be a Championship player. Brentford were bidding for him in the summer, so great. He's done it. And Lincoln's, it's one of those good stories where a loan works out, benefits Lincoln, benefits Forest, and the player can go on. He's obviously going to, be a top-end Championship player or Premier League player at some point. George Grant wasn't actually in the team for Peterborough last night. They're searching for the right formula. I'm sure in the end they'll end up losing him. And Morgan Rogers was the other one you were talking about. I don't know whether he'll end up getting crowded out at Bournemouth just by the sheer quality. They've got David Brooks, Jaden Anthony, Junior Stanislas, and I'm probably missing somebody else out on the wings. They've just got some very good players there. So obviously it will benefit him, but it's one of those ones with players like that. Ipswich had Trevor Chalobah, probably at the only point where they could get Trevor Chalobah. Morgan Rogers will not play in League One again. And, you got him at a good time.
I think he had quite the act to follow, didn't he? Following up from Dan Juman, he's clearly made a good start to his career at Villarreal. Let's look ahead to Saturday then. Ipswich, are you thinking that it's a game that you could get 3 points from?
No, absolutely not. No. So, look, the most Ipswich thing in the world now would be, and this is stupid reverse logic or lack of therein, But now you play Lincoln, who are sort of a well-coached side who, I mean, you tell me, I think the overriding thing was that you probably should have lost against Rotherham in midweek.
Yeah, a little bit.
Am I right? But look, if Rotherham can't turn up and win, they're like the League One experts, aren't they? The most Ipswich thing in the world would now be to take 7 points out of Lincoln, Wickham and Sheffield Wednesday. But it's very, very much on a knife edge. It really, really is, whereby we're not sure what the team selection will be. The morale is at such a point that didn't you beat us? Was it 5-3 or 5-2 or something?
Yeah, 5-3, and then there was also those cup games, wasn't there, in the past? So we sort of feel like Ipswich are a bit of a milestone for us.
You could almost get, if the doomsday scenario comes out and the psychology's bad, you could almost get a big Lincoln win. You could get the doomsday scenario for you guys, where all of a sudden these players that are clearly playing beneath the level that any of them played at for most of their career, they all click, and you could get a big Ipswich win. So it's a really, I would not be surprised with a 2 or 3 goal victory either way if either of those things happen. If you can play into the fragility of Ipswich at the moment, it's an easy win, isn't it? And we're so easy to score against. But at some point, surely that squad and that manager is going to click, aren't they?
Yeah. Sure. Well, you'd probably like to think so. One man that might well be making an appearance against Ipswich, which might be a bit weird for you to see, is Teddy Bishop.
Right. Yeah.
One of your academy lads come to Lincoln over the course of the summer. Was froze out at Ipswich, from what I can remember from reading the press around it. What have you sort of made of Teddy Bishop then over his Ipswich career? I know we've sort of spoke about it on Twitter a couple of times, but perhaps just tell us a little bit why Ipswich maybe throws him out a little bit.
Yeah, I wouldn't go. I'd push back against the term "frozen out." I don't think that's necessarily fair. I think Ipswich did a lot for Ted Bishop, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. And he was one of the many victims of the big kind of reshuffle that happened. In 2014-15, Bishop, he must have been like 18 or something, came in to Mick McCarthy's team that finished 6th. And you were genuinely sat there thinking, if Ipswich function at the top of the championship and this player plays like this, it's a 5 million, 10 million quid player. Those players just are. And he would drive from midfield and dribble past players and, create things with that skill set he had from central midfield. And then the poor fella just got injured time after time after time. And we try and rehabilitate him. And there was one horrible one where we brought him back so gradually and he just started going. And then you could see in his face, and he knew it was a bad one as well. And he broke down and he got injured again. He didn't do himself a lot of good by doing the sticking his fingers in the ears celebration after scoring once. But look, I think a lot of players were watching the basketball and just doing that celebration for whatever reason. That didn't go down overly well with a lot of the fans. But yeah, he started last season well, and then in the end, big shuffle, and Cook just wanted a clean sweep. I like Ted Bishop very, very much, and at his best, especially, you don't see many players who can do that central midfield drive. Yeah. I'm not comparing him to Paul Gascoigne, for God's sake, but Paul Gascoigne, that was his signature move.
Yeah.
Middle of the pitch, crowded with players, just drove through all of them. And, Ted Bishop, at his best, used to be able to do that in the championship. So wish him the absolute best of luck. There's a player there. Please stay fit, Ted Bishop, though.
Yeah, we've sort of seen that quite a few times, but he seems to be off the bench quite a lot, and he's always out the squad as well, which is quite disappointing. Let's get a score prediction then, Ben, ahead of Saturday's fixture. I know you sort of said it could swing literally either way, but I think that's probably the bonkers part of it. So let's see how nuts you are in the head. Let's see what you're thinking for Saturday.
Well, I won't tell you which team will score either denomination of goals, but let's assume there'll be lots of goals and it'll be 3-1. And I've got absolutely no idea which way it'll go. I'm going to stay firmly planted on the fence. I wouldn't be surprised if Lincoln won 3-1. I wouldn't be surprised if Ipswich won 3-1. I don't know the prices, but I would go in on both teams to score. That
Lovely.
seems to be the one.
Well, thank you very much for making your hat-trick appearance on the channel, Ben. Anything that you feel like you'd like to plug at this moment in time?
Do I get to keep the match ball?
Well, potentially. Well, Joe Citrone has beat you to it, so you are the second person to do it. But I'm sure we can send you one in the post.
No, obviously for Ipswich content, the Blue Monday podcast, go and check that out. Look, it is an Ipswich podcast, but if you're a Lincoln fan and you want to tune in, we'll give a completely, I hope you can tell from my demeanour, we'll give a completely even-handed, look at the game. Obviously, there'll be some implicit bias towards Ipswich, but if you want to know how your team's perceived from the outside, give that a listen. And then my own personal stuff, it's championship stuff. You were so close. I could have been covering you this season, for goodness sakes. Is just type in the Benjamin Bloom football channel or Benjamin Bloom into YouTube, and that'll pop up. We do on my channel, we do a League One show. It doesn't feature Lincoln as one of the main teams. We do the teams that got relegated out of the Championship with our friend Nappers, who you've probably come across, who covers Fleetwood as well. So we do that on the channel as well. And every time one of our 5 teams faces Lincoln, we will cover Lincoln. So there you go. Follow me on Twitter at Benjamin Bloom.
Definitely worth a follow and a subscribe. Anyway, thank you very much, Ben, for coming on. Massively appreciated. Thank everybody else for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that sort of stuff. And we'll see you next week.